Training Camp 2021 is underway from the Quest Diagnostics Training Center in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It's the Giants Training Camp Report presented by Investors Bank and the first official practice of 2021. So glad you could join us. Bob Popo along with two-time Super Bowl champion Carl Banks. And Carl, year two of Joe Judge. But I want to take you back to your time as a player. What was it like when you got to that first practice in preparation for a season?
Super excited. Like, you know it's going to be a grind, but just the fact that you're back with your guys and you're trying to get your mind ready, because physically you think you've done everything to be ready, but like mentally you got to get cursed out by the coaches. You're going to be screamed at on the first day, and you just want to like just get your mind right, but it's exciting to be back on the first day.
Now, the one thing I know that's a little different from your time as a Giant with training camp at Pace or at FDU in Madison, New Jersey, you didn't get the music to get you going a little bit to start things.
No, the last time we would hear music is walking out of the locker room on somebody's little small radio or something.
Lorenzo Carter, that is a player that I know last year there were a lot of things that you saw from him that you liked. Obviously, his season was cut short with injury. The Giants need to get more consistent pressure on the quarterback on the defensive side of the ball. Do you think this is the breakout year for Lorenzo?
Well, I can tell you this much. At a position of need, this team has the most competition at that position. So they're going to get their best out of the players at the edge because they have so much competition and so much talent. And to answer your question, yes, I do think this will be the year. If Carter stays healthy, he will have a really good year.
You know, and it's kind of like put up or shut up for players that are in this part of their career where you've got to prove to the organization that you're part of their future. You know, Judge, first-year head coach last year with the pandemic. This year, different protocols are in place. What about Coach Judge from last season really impressed you the most?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me, Bob, was his ability to immediately connect with his players. That's not hard to do for a new coach. Everything's done virtually. He was able to connect with the players, get them to play at a high level. Win, lose, or draw, they competed every single game.
You know, one of the things that the players talked about was conditioning and Joe Judge's conditioning of the football team. And, you know, the guys talked about it this year. They know this camp is going to be hard. This is the first camp with the New York Giants for Kenny Golladay in his fifth year out of Northern Illinois, signed as a free agent. Carl, Kenny Golladay checks a lot of boxes. What do you see him bringing to this football team?
Well, he improves the accuracy of a quarterback. He's a guy that you can trust with 50-50 balls. He's giving you size, number one, physicality, and that's something, you know, when you look at the Giants receiving corps, they really hadn't had a lot of size outside. They've had speed, they've had quickness, but they haven't had a guy on the outside with any size like an Amani Toomer. Well, Plaxico was kind of a unicorn because he was 6'6", but just a guy who can eat space and play physical out in space.
You know, you mentioned catch radius. You know, not every throw is going to be perfect. And you mentioned Plaxico Burress. He would make these incredible leaping patches on the deep crosses. Amani Toomer was so good along the boundary where, listen, not every catch is going to be like it is in practice. And we saw way too many drops last year on balls that were catchable.
Sure.
Sometimes you got to play above the X's and O's.
You have to play above the X's and O's. And let's be honest, Bob, not every pass is a spiral either. Some of them come out as ducks. So you got to be able to catch those. But to be able to make a difficult catch to bail your quarterback out on third down, who knows what duress he's under when that ball leaves his hands. So you've got to be available in all assets of the receiving position.
Obviously, the Giants really helping out their defensive side of the ball as well as we take a look at one of the newcomers. And Adoree Jackson, who the Giants signed, was a stud player at USC. This is a player that comes to the Giants with a proven resume. Got to stay healthy, but we saw last year with Bradbury having the incredible year that he had, the other side was the weak link. And when teams needed to get something, They didn't look Bradbury's way. They went the other way. Adoree Jackson balances this whole thing out.
He balances it out, Bob, but you also, again, when we looked at Dave Gettleman a few seconds ago, when you talk about addressing needs and creating competition, that position, the cornerback and the edge position, are two areas that were of need, but not only did they upgrade it, they created competition because you had young players that were coming along their rookie year. So now you're going to see a very competitive group.
You know, one of the other guys that, as you get a look at James Bradbury, who was brilliant last year for the Giants in his first year, he did a wonderful job coming to the Giants and being a very important factor in stabilizing this secondary and this defense. Then you look at the back end, right? You got Jabril Peppers. The acquisition of Logan Ryan was outstanding. And I'm really curious to see Xavier McKinney, who got hurt in training camp last year and then had to kind of get up to speed late in the season, what he brings fully healthy to this team.
Well, we got a glimpse late in the year, and we can say with a pretty good amount of certainty that he's an NFL-ready safety. He's going to have to learn a little more, but he's got really good ball skills.
Yeah, and he brings that smarts to the table. Obviously, being coached out of Alabama, he's somebody that, I want to see him in this Patrick Graham defense for a full season, getting all these reps in training camp. And this Giant defense that was kind of a weak link suddenly became a strength, and a lot of that has to go to teaching and coaching, doesn't it?
Well, it really does. When you look at this Giant coaching staff, right? They're teachers. They're teachers first. They teach fundamentals. And one thing Coach Judge said, we go practice, but we train also. We train to condition for being available all throughout the game. We train for technique. So it's all about teaching. It's just not being a repetitious walkthrough. They're training their players. They're teaching their players in the fundamentals needed to be successful early in the game, late in the game, and then late in the season as well.
I'll tell you a guy that I'm really interested in seeing how he fits into this Giants defense is Ifedi Odenigbo. Because when we had a chance to watch him on tape in the offseason and looking what the Giants were picking up, when you look at football teams, when they make moves in the offseason, sometimes you're able to cherry pick young emerging players. And to me, Odenigbo looks like one of those guys that a year from now, 2 years from now, people could be talking about a steal that the Giants got as far as a smart signing.
Well, absolutely, Bob. And see, that's the thing about it. We often get focused on the today, right? But general managers have to look at the tomorrow and the year after tomorrow. So he's going to be a guy that, number one, again, creates more competition at the position, but also he's going to be on an ascension to be the guy.
And he's a guy that's versatile. They can use him in a lot of different spots, and versatility is obviously a very important part of Patrick Graham's defense. But I think Odenigbo could be one of these players that could be that really nice X factor for a football team.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing. Because they're so multiple on defense, right? The more you can be brought up to speed, the more they're going to use you. And that's when you talk about the edge rusher / linebacker, right? When you talk about the safety pure in the safety box, right? You look at a group of guys that are all interchangeable. Like if you wanted Lorenzo Carter to be in space and not rush, he could do that. But he can rush. If you wanted Peppers in the box and McKinney back, they could do that, or they can interchange them. So that's the beauty of a Patrick Graham defense and why they put such an emphasis on teaching, because they want guys to be hybrid players. They want to use every aspect of their skill set.
Yeah, and there's a lot that we're going to be talking about during these live look-ins to the Giants Training Camp 2021 presented by Investors Bank. And it's exciting to be here. Last year when we came out to a practice and training camp, obviously there were a lot of restrictions and there was a lot unknown. But with the vaccinations and with the protocols that are put in place, definitely is a different feel.
Oh, you can. It's starting to feel like football. Now, we got football last year, but this feels more traditional. You had your first press gaggle that was non-Zoom today, and you see the writers and the cameras out here with very little restrictions. Obviously, there are some, but like it looks like a normal football practice, like an NFL training camp.
All right, let's go to the big picture, and it's right there. Giants quarterback Daniel Jones going into year number 3. I love what the Giants did here, Carl, in the offseason. Look, we've talked about it when we talk about the National Football League in an overall brush or look at it. Last year was a big year for those quarterbacks going into year number 3. Obviously, Josh Allen in Buffalo did well and excelled. Baker Mayfield did well in Cleveland. He excelled. Sam Darnold with the Jets did not. So now this is year number 3 for Daniel Jones. The Giants have gone out and gotten a lot of support for him on the offensive side of the ball. We saw Kenny Golladay. Kyle Rudolph is not practicing yet. He's on the PUP because of that foot injury, but he adds to the tight end depth. They've added depth at the running back. A lot of pressure on his shoulders going into year number 3, the quarterback.
Well, pressure is when you don't know what to do, Bob. I think Daniel Jones knows what to do. He's second year in with this offensive system, so that'll be a help to him. But you could just look at his body and tell just he has much more confidence in what he's doing. You see a more confident leadership swagger from Daniel Jones. But again, when you put the weapons around him, it's just going to be a natural progression. I never thought that from year 1 to year 2 to this year that there was such a question mark. He's progressed every year. Obviously, there are things you have to clean up, such as turnovers. But the maturation at playing the position, I think he's done that from year to year, and there's been appreciable growth. So I expect him to take the next step.
You know, the growth that he had last year was seen within the building with the new coaching staff. But let's face it, everybody who's watching this show, who's a fan right now, they want to see it on the field. They want to see the numbers, and I think people forget about Daniel Jones' rookie season in 12 starts, what he did throwing the football, touchdown to interception ratio. Obviously, the fumbles were a big issue, and a lot of it is going to depend on what these guys up front do.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking at what fans expect to see from Daniel Jones. It's going to be dependent on this group here we're looking at right now. If they're stable and they're performing and they can protect, and also, Bob, let's not forget, they lost Saquon Barkley. He helps in the pass game as well as the run game. So if they can get balance in this offense, then you'll start to see a better Daniel Jones.
Giants have Nate Solder back. Obviously, he had opted out last year for obvious reasons. So Nate is back. And, you know, he was the starting left tackle. He was the starting left tackle when he was with the New England Patriots. But he has always been about team, which is why his teammates really like him. And he said, look, I'm just here to play, and wherever they feel they need to slot me in, I want to help the team be successful. And when you have that kind of attitude and that messaging, that spreads through that locker room, doesn't it?
It really does, Bob. And the other thing, too, when we talk about this offensive line, the experience is the best teacher, right? In this group last year, all young guys, they got a lot of experience. So now you have that, and the voice of Nate Solder. They've got great competition, but these guys know what's expected of this league. These young offensive linemen now know what to expect in this league.
Yeah, and Andrew Thomas, who was the rookie last year, kind of got thrown into the fire, thinking he was going to probably be the right tackle. New coaching staff, new offense, has to play left tackle. He's kind of entrenched there. The big question is who plays on that right side. Is it going to be Solder? Matt Peart's out with an injury right now, but he's a guy that really showed a lot when he got in the games last year.
Exceeded expectations. I mean, he was, I don't know if you would call him a throw-in at the draft, but everybody was talking about Thomas. And the people were saying, well, you know, Peart's, he's going to be a work in progress, doesn't have the NFL body. They put him in there, and I think he exceeded everyone's expectations.
So you hit the ground running, right? It's the first day of training camp. Guys are still loosening up. They're going through individual drills as a unit. As a veteran player, did you find a way to pace yourself? Because you used to have two-a-days.
Yeah.
These guys are fortunate.
Well,
they don't have to come back in the afternoon and do this again at 4 o'clock when the heat's searing.
Well, here's the thing. You condition, for two-a-days, you just condition differently. But by the time the first week is over, there's Sterling Shepard, new number.
I cannot get used to it.
Get used to it.
I know, I'm going to have to get used to it.
Yeah.
87 is now number 3.
I know.
But you do have to kind of pace yourself and sort of manage your body with the way today's NFL is.
But then again, like the conditioning that these guys go through and what they're doing now to get in football shape, I'm not sure is going to be as big of a grind. It's a mental thing because, like you said, they don't have two-a-days.
So the first practice of 2021 is in full swing. It's hard to believe because he's still got that baby face, but now he's married, he's got kids. But to me, Sterling Shepard still feels like a youngster. It's hard to believe as Darius Slayton makes a catch there. It's hard to believe he's the longest tenured Giant.
I know, he's a veteran, and he's still got that rookie demeanor, just happy, go lucky, enjoying football, enjoying life. So he's got the right approach to it.
Carl, what about sort of the Giants are going to have a pair of joint practices. They're going to practice in Cleveland against the Browns, and they're going to practice against the Patriots in Foxborough before the preseason game at MetLife Stadium. You don't have two-a-days. They've reduced the preseason now down to 3 games. Maximizing each rep becomes very important, doesn't it?
It does. And here's what I like about the joint practice is who they chose to practice against. The Cleveland Browns are going to go deep into the playoffs. They've got a great defensive line. They've got a really good offensive line. They are going to challenge this Giant team in practices and in drills at every phase of football. And this is where you'll find out where you have to get better because you're going to have to compete with those guys in individual drills. Your cornerbacks are going to be going against some really good receivers. Your offensive linemen are going to be going against really good defensive front and on the other side of the ball too. So this is exactly what this team needs. And then going against the Patriots is a gold standard. Now they're trying to find what they have too. So you've got two teams that you got one team that know what it's like to be at the top, right? And they're trying to get there. So that experience with this team, practicing against them, they'll get an idea of what high expectations really are.
Yeah, because I know for us, just being here at practices each and every year, sometimes you can get fooled. Yeah. And we've been fooled where you're watching practice, they're going against each other, and you're saying, hey, this looks good. That looks good, man, this guy. And then you get to games, and that unit is non-existent, and then you suddenly start to realize, well, wait a second. They're making plays against what might be a weak link in the league.
Exactly.
And I think when the Giants practiced in Cincinnati several years ago, I think that was a big eye-opener because they got kind of dominated in some of those practices. Yeah. And that's when Cincinnati, with Marvin Lewis, they had some playoff-bound teams. And it makes you realize exactly where we are as we see Xavier McKinney right there going through some DB drills. But I love the joint practices. You can control it. Julian Love, see if he can make an impact on this football team. Part of that depth and rotation in the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be one of the more exciting groups to watch, Bob, because of their versatility and, just where they can just interchange guys and really give offenses different looks.
Hopefully we can get back to the wide receivers for a second because there's 2 guys that I want to talk about. We saw him making a catch before. Darius Slayton broke out, had a really good rookie season. Then last year with the pandemic and with the Giants' struggles offensively, wasn't able to do or match his production level that he had his rookie season. But when now you add a guy like Galladay, and you add Kyle Rudolph in the tight end spot to go along with Evan Ingram, does it maybe take a little focus away from Slayton and allow him to maybe not feel the pressure to have to be the man?
Well, here's the thing about Darius Slayton. He got an education in how defenses prepare for a guy who's got a lot of potential, or a lot of talent, I should say. He had a breakout year, his rookie year. Comes back expecting to have the same results, right? Well, defenses had a plan for that. And then when all the other receivers went down and you were the go-to guy, they really had a plan for you, and there was just not a lot you can do. So I'm hoping that he went to school on some of the things that he could have done better in situations. Yes, the complementary players or the players that are going to complement this receiving core will make it easy for him, but there are going to be times where he's got to win his battle. And he knows what the defense is going to do to him, and he's still got to win it. That's the maturation of Darius Slayton that I want to see.
And you see number 12 there, intriguing signing by the Giants. That's John Ross, who was a first-round pick of the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, he has had an injury-plagued career. It started, in his first camp with the Cincinnati Bengals. They had high expectations for him. The guy was a burner at the combine, got a lot of speed. One of the things that I like about this signing is, Carl, it's a prove-it kind of deal. If he's right physically, he gives you this element of deep ball speed that you can use in packages.
Sure.
To me, it was one of these no-risk moves, not going to cost you a lot of money, and there's upside to it.
Well, yeah, that's the key right there, Bob, the upside. He's only in his fourth year or fifth year.
Fourth year.
Fourth year. So, you can literally strike gold here. If he's healthy and productive, then you got a guy for the next 6 or 7 years.
When he got signed by Cincinnati, he was supposed to be the opposite guy for A.J. Green, balance out Cincinnati's receiving core. It never played that way. The Giants signed him, and they're not asking him to be that number 2 or that 1A. They're just asking him, let's see what you got, and if you earn time, you could be part of a rotation, which could make us dynamic. There's Evan Ingram. Obviously, interesting, right? Went to the Pro Bowl last year, but there's a lot left on the table. He might be one of the most interesting players on the New York Giants roster because he leaves you wanting more.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where, you see a bad play and you say you can't live with him. And then you see just such great athleticism in a really good play and you can't live without him. So at this point, he's got to cross over the line of they can't live without me permanently because he's just too good of a talent to be inconsistent. And if you can get him going along with the talent on the wide receiving core, it's just going to be hard to defend.
Right, and then when you go 2 tight ends with him and Kyle Rudolph as an example out there, now you have 2 guys who are weapons in the pass game, and then it's almost as if Ingram becomes another wide receiver for you.
He really is. There's just so much you can do with him when he's reliable and can catch the football with consistency. The sky's the limit.
See number 28 in the background, that's Devontae Booker, who the Giants brought in to help out with the running back depth. Another veteran running back added, Corey Clement, in his 4th year out of Wisconsin. He's a New Jersey native. He wears number 30, so there's another veteran running back that adds a little versatility to the Giants running back position and adds some experience. Between Booker and Clement, you got guys that have started in the National Football League and have been guys that have had to carry the water for a time as well.
It's just going to be an exciting and interesting year in the division that people labeled the NFC East for the last couple of years. And I think what you're seeing across the division is a lot of teams that are getting better. You saw from the Washington football team what they do on defense. They had offensive weapons that were starting to emerge, right? Dallas was supposedly the gold standard, right? Well, I think the gap is closed between Washington, Dallas, and this New York Giant football team. We don't know what the Eagles are going to be because they're transitioning, but I suspect they won't be as bad as people think they are.
No, and if you take a look at the landscape of the division with Dak Prescott back, and if he's 100% healthy, offensively they're going to put up numbers. The big question is, what do they do defensively? I think you can make the case that the Washington football team's defensive front line, their defensive line could be the best in the National Football League, and they're all young.
They're all young.
The question for them is what's going to happen at the quarterback position. And I think this division is going to be a lot better this year. I think there's a lot of improvement But from a Giants perspective, if Daniel Jones, again, and I kind of reiterate this point, if he plays more like he played his rookie season, I think this team has an opportunity to do some pretty good things.
I agree. You know, the one area that we didn't talk about is the Giants' defensive line. They're pretty good, too.
And we got a lot of shows here during training camp.
I know, but when you talk about each position group, they landed the biggest free agent by not letting him go, Leonard Williams.
Leonard Williams. Obviously, in his time with the Giants, he's developed a role as a leader. But more importantly, he brings you a lot of versatility on that defensive front, whether it's getting after the quarterback, playing inside, playing outside. What do you expect out of Leonard Williams now that he's got his new deal and he knows he's entrenched with the New York Giants?
He just becomes more of what he is, a good player. I mean, the guy that walked through the door, his reputation was that, can't get it done, only gets close. The guy that we saw was a guy that got it done. So I suspect he's going to stay there and continue to go because he's hard to block.
So that leads us to another guy on the defensive line, which I think the pressure starts to build. Dexter Lawrence has to step his game up now to the next level.
Well, I think Dexter Lawrence has been more consistent than people think. I think Leonard Williams has kind of been the flash guy. But Dexter Lawrence, athletic, big, physical player, has been consistent. Now, does he take the next step and become more domineering as a defensive lineman? Because he can be that. He's been consistently good, but can he be domineering and be in ascent to another level of good or better than good?
Quest Diagnostics Training Center is the site for Giants Training Camp 2021. Make sure you check out all the Giants media platforms for coverage of training camp each and every day, including tomorrow. So for Carl Banks and our entire crew, I'm Bob Papa. Thanks for joining us for Giants Training Camp Report, presented by Investors Bank.